We've often said this, and I believe it in my heart of hearts to be true, that if the line makers are running the country, we wouldn't have to worry about all these debates about the economy, whether Trump's on the right track with his 200% tariffs or Kamala has all the answers, giving the money away like there's no tomorrow. The line makers are just razor sharp. They always are. Witness what happened in last night's games. And then you could add on top of that it's always ominous as these games often boil down to the presence on the field of a field goal kicker. In his case last night with the Dallas game against the New York Giants, you're talking about Aubrey Ayers, who I want to say missed his very first professional attempt at an extra point and then proceeded to just hammer away in Justin Tucker-esque type fashion. And I believe all of last year, he missed a total of 2 kicks. So he walked onto the field last night with the spread somewhere between 5 and 6 points. The New York Giants are in there. A lot of people had it at 5.5. We gave the game out at 6 with Troy West saying that the Cowboys would prevail. 5 field goals for the Giants in the game kept them in it. The over-under players consensus yesterday had people advising people to go with the over. That turned out to be a big mistake. And sure enough, Ayers, who had already nailed a 60-yarder, misses what, by his standards, has been a chip shot, a 51-yard field goal, and a lot of money exchanged one way or the other on that particular kick. But that's the way it went. You talk about the history of tough beats. If you're on the Dallas side of things, well, maybe you deserve to get hit in the face with a haymaker. And if you were on the Giants side, you found salvation in the fact that they were able to stay within 5. Well, we have the professor joining us here in just a sec. We're going to get into some college football. Big slate of games, including a giant marquee matchup. I don't know if that's going to be one of his official picks. Professor, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. The only thing you left out of there, your little recap, is Al Michaels doing everything it just saying a boogie, 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 as
You know he had the G-Man,
the
yes.
Cowboys guy set up for the kick there. I mean, short of him like rattling a voodoo doll at the screen, Al Michaels doing absolutely everything he could to win. I thought that was like a throwback to the Brent Musburger days.
Yes.
But yeah, Al Michaels again, sort of miss it, Noonan, miss it. Just everything he could to put the announcer whammy on that last field goal. And sure enough, I mean, it almost looked like he tried to hook it back in. They made a little curve at the left there, but it looked like it was badly shanked, right coming off of his foot.
I ended up on the Giants side of things after thinking about it for a long period of time because of a stat that we'd given out the other day that we got from our good friend Sheldon G, who pointed out that in the NFL so far this year, through 3
This is
now
a
plus
five and a
weeks,
half point things.
the 5.5 point deal, 14
Yeah.
and 2 against the spread, with 10 wins straight up. And so, if you were going to buy
Okay,
into a trend, maybe you ride that
but
one
for
for
some
one more
reason
game.
people discounted when I keep seeing that number thrown around. I saw it thrown around Monday, and then they pretended like the Jacksonville game didn't happen for some reason. So I think it's actually 15-3.
Okay, could be. I mean, nonetheless, it was overwhelmingly favorable one way, and it stayed that way as you skate by a half a point if you weren't on the number of 5, which case you got out of it with a push. Now, if you are betting the games, Professor, Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. They have every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads during the course of the game itself. If you think you know your stuff, get in on their $200,000 mega contest. Pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance to win weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. That's pretty nice, 200 times. When the game's over, head on over to the online casino. You can play poker, you can play blackjack, you can engage in over 150 slot games they make available to you. Head to the website today to get in on all the action. Bet Online. The game starts here. It's a call to the post, Professor. College football, this is your thing. You're coming off a sensational 3-1 week. What are we totaled out on the show now? Are you at 9-3?
I believe it's 12-6 on the
12-6. Okay. Somewhere in there. But last couple of weeks, been hitting it pretty hard. And great picks last week on the show. Marquee game on the board. I don't know if it's going to be one of your selections. Many
It is
people
not.
will have opinions on this game. I'm just curious to get your position. Georgia,
I
after laying that egg in that 13-12 game, sort of had a lot of people turned off. And Alabama was one of your secret sleeper plays, possibly to win a national championship. I think at 14-1. So,
I mean, I know
what do you
how
think?
much of a secret it was. They didn't start the season like top 5 or top 6. I What do I think? I think you've got a very interesting matchup where the numbers completely clash with each other and come up with, flip a coin. Kalen DeBoer as a Division One underdog, 8-2 against the spread, 7-3 straight up. Kirby Smart as a road favorite, something like 14-3 during his time at Georgia. I think pretty much every number with these two programs, sort of what you'd expect. They point exactly what back in each other. I look at a few things here. Number one, through 3 weeks, Georgia can't run the football, which is really, I think, a big surprise to everybody in the country. Because coming into the season, you looked at this offensive line, it was really supposed to be, if not the best run blocking offensive line, then certainly one of them. Uh, but against Clemson and then against Kentucky, totally inept running the football. Just could not run the ball. Now, some of that I think is really more the running backs. I was never a huge fan of ATN at Florida. I'm not at Georgia. The rest of the depth, not what is it. Also, let's be honest, Clemson, maybe elite defensive front seven. Kentucky under Stoops, always a very good defensive front seven. So the fact they couldn't run against those teams doesn't mean at some point in the year they won't be able to run against Vanderbilt. But you're not playing Vanderbilt. You're playing Alabama. So I think Georgia probably will be one-dimensional in this game. How much do you trust Beck? And then what do you think the Alabama offense can do against that Georgia defense? Now, I don't think either team's going to move the ball consistently in this matchup. I don't think you're going to see 15, 16, 17 play touchdown drives, where you do the old school, run it down their throats, Nick Saban, Kirby Smart football. I think this will be a big play game, and I think Alabama's equipped with that. I think Milroe's a big play quarterback. He's not necessarily high percentage passing, mid-range passing guy. He is a big play guy. So I would point to Alabama a little bit in this matchup. Obviously, home underdog, that happens about once every other decade with the Alabama football program. But I think, and again, Smart knew Saban. Saban knew Smart. Nobody was fooling anybody. I don't know that Smart knows DeBoer nearly as well. So I think the advantage of surprise probably a little bit on the Alabama side. So I'd point a little bit to Alabama. I would make one of my plays of the week. But look, we know people love to watch the big games. They love to bet on the big games when they watch them. I would look at Alabama in this one.
All right, maybe a slightly better performance so far this year. If just looking at on-field results, certainly that was a shocker when Georgia was taken right to the wire there in that 13-12 debacle. That
I mean, it wasn't much
they
between
had.
Alabama and South Florida, if we're being honest here.
Yeah, and then we saw South Florida subsequently get annihilated by the University of Miami, which is another game that's on the schedule tonight. Everybody that I'm looking at in terms of handicappers. And the general survey that I've done seems to recommend taking the points. I
Taking
mean,
the
I know
points or
Frank
laying the
Beamer's
points?
a long way, gone, but taking the points, taking like I think 17 and a hook now with Virginia Tech under the auspices of Miami's run of blowouts is going to come to an end because they're finally playing somebody
See,
that can at
I got to
least
tell you,
put up
most
some
of the people
resistance.
I've seen are on the other side of that.
Oh
Most of the
yeah,
people I've
okay.
seen. And as a Hurricanes fan, that scares me to death because, Mario Cristobal is at his most dangerous to his own team when everything is supposed to go right. Again, the conflicting factors here. Virginia Tech disappointing, really on both sides of the football this year, but particularly defensive on the offensive side of the football. Miami comes in with a very live defensive line against an offensive line that has been terrible to this point of the year. So that very much points at Miami. On the other hand, the most live defense Miami has seen thus far this season. So we'll see how the Hurricane offense, which struggled a little bit in the first half against USF, definitely got it together in the second half, but struggled a little bit in the first half. This will be the best defense they play. We'll see. I personally wouldn't touch the game with a 10-foot pole at that number because I could easily see this being like a one-score game in the fourth quarter, and I could easily see Miami winning by 50. So, and that's all on Mario Cristobal. If Miami had a better game day coach, I would actually probably be pointing at the Canes. But again, everybody's familiar with the career knows at some point Miami's going to stumble against somebody stupid, and Virginia Tech certainly qualifies.
All right, and I don't know. It doesn't sound like that's one of your strong plays. So, well, let's get into your recommendations.
It is absolutely not, but we do have one for tonight.
Yes.
The Friday night streak continues, and our friend Jersey Kyle is going to love this because we are taking Rutgers -1.5 over Washington. Not impressed with the Huskies. They did bounce back with a victory over Northwestern, but it was hardly a dominant of one at 24-5. I believe it was an 11-point line. So they covered, but again, 24 points against Northwestern is not an impressive output, particularly on your home field. Now they come all the way across the country for a primetime game for a Rutgers team that just beat that Virginia Tech team on the road, who beat them in Blacksburg. You know, where enter Sandman and all Virginia Tech's mystique. That's really probably right up there with any win in terms of environment Rutgers have ever had. Prior to that, smoked Howard and Akron. Neither of whom are impressive by any means, but you took care of business. So Rutgers looking like they're building on that bowl performance last year where they went and beat the University of Miami in a bowl game. Obviously, Miami heavily retooled since then. But Rutgers off to an impressive start and only laying 1.5 at home in what is a pretty interesting little college football environment. When the team is good, you combine that with the Friday start, possible near disastrous conditions as the upper bands of this hurricane start to make their way north. Could be a very rough night for the University of Washington, and we definitely like Rutgers only laying 1.5 in this spot.
All right, so that's our first play, and it begins tonight on the college slate with the professor. Rutgers laying 1.5 against Washington at home. Rutgers under Greg Schiano. I mean, remember when he first took over the team? He was the darling against the spread. I think they were like 2-10 or something like that, but they had covered the spread in almost every game, and he became a big hero of the degenerate.
Yes, Brian Leonard and then Ray Rice years for Rutgers.
And he came back to the program.
It'll be interesting to see if they let Ray Rice back on the field these days. And they probably would, I assume.
Ray Rice, I think, did a pretty good job as these kind of situations go of showing some form of redemption.
I don't think he had a choice, right? When they catch you doing it on video, like it's not the normal.
Well, but I mean, usually you don't see this kind of reconciliation with the people that are involved, and I think he just reported himself very well after that.
But again, you don't usually have it, from a security camera.
That was one of the first, yeah.
You're going Tyson on your wife at a casino elevator.
Roger Goodell.
If you're going to do that kind of thing, I'm not talking about domestic violence. If you're going to misbehave, why the hell are you doing it in a casino? Like,
casino elevator, sure.
Everywhere.
No, I mean, an unfortunate incident. But I was impressed with Ray Rice afterwards. I mean, at first, everybody naturally despised it, and it was as despicable as anything you've ever seen. But he really, I think, did a pretty good job of sort of turning things around, although he definitely was, cancel cultured and what was the least to receive any kind of sympathy or empathy thereafter. All right, never mind that. If they wheel out Ray Rice, I'm not sure if it's an ominous sign one way or the other, but we're going to go ahead and lay the 1.5 with the professor. Rutgers taking on Washington at home tonight. All right, what else do we have on the slate?
We're going to ping pong some teams we've used over the last few weeks, and one of them, our noon kickoff. Oklahoma State goes to Kansas State. I'm showing currently getting 5. They were getting upwards of 6 earlier in the week, but we'll call it 5. Tough week for both teams. Kansas State went to BYU and got killed. Oklahoma State lost a very physical game at home to Utah. Short story here is Mike Gundy's better on the road. He's home, and he's better as an underdog than he is as a favorite. He's in both situations here as a road underdog to a Kansas State team that showed a lot of vulnerabilities last week. I look for Oklahoma State to bounce back. Physical, close, low-scoring football game. Oklahoma State, I think, runs the ball a little bit better than Kansas State does, although they have not shown it to this point this year. And I think their speed on defense is really going to bother that Kansas State offense with that 3-3-5. They like to play with those linebackers who can fly around there in Stillwater. So I think, again, not calling for the money line, not calling for a straight-up win, but I look for this to be like a field goal game. Oklahoma State may not get the game, but they'll get the money at +5 against Kansas State.
All right, getting 5 points with Oklahoma State on the road against Kansas State. We have Rutgers in the bank. Where else are we going on the college slate, Professor?
3:30 start, and a line I'm genuinely absolutely baffled about as Notre Dame at home laying 7 to a 3-0 Louisville team that I think has looked pretty impressive thus far this year. I guess maybe people have decided that the win over Purdue fixed everything for Notre Dame, or maybe it's their impressive 28-3 showing over Miami of Ohio. No, look, I kid there a little bit. Miami of Ohio is actually a pretty solid MAC team. Although they are 0-3, Its losses to Notre Dame, Cincinnati, and Northwestern. Miami of Ohio not an offensive powerhouse, so Notre Dame holding the 3 doesn't mean a ton to me. Louisville comes in. I think they're a pretty good defensive team this year. They did lose their quarterback, but they seem to replace him. And he was nothing special. He was kind of a locks last year anyway. So I think they can continue to build on the success they had as an ACC division champion last year. Going into South Bend, getting 7 points, I think there's an excellent chance Louisville's going to win this football game straight up. I think at getting a touchdown, it's an absolute no-brainer. Louisville plus the 7 here. Look, Notre Dame's the same team we've seen for the first few weeks. They do have a solid defense. Again, I'm looking for a low-scoring game. They have not gotten anything out of Riley Leonard in the vertical passing game. They have to run the football. They had long drives, quarterback runs, very intermediate passes, mostly off of bootlegs and getting him outside the pocket. It's a kind of anemic offense. Can they manage to scrape things out like they did the first week against Texas A&M? Probably. So again, take the points. Don't worry about the money line in this one, even though I do think Louisville can win this game. If you're in a situation where you get a team who can win the game and you get 7 points, take the points. Because, again, I think you're going to see a lot of low total games on Notre Dame's games this year. I think you're going to see a lot of like 4, 6, 3-point games. So getting 7 here seems like a no-brainer to me. The Cardinals plus the 7.
Marcus Freeman, as likable as he is, and as much as he appears to be the classic motivator and say all the right rah-rah type of
Good-looking
things.
guy, not so sure he's upstairs in the brain department.
He's making Jerry Faust look like Newt Rockney in some of these situations.
Let's not go too far.
All right, that's 3 of them in the bank here so far.
Let's not glorify Jerry Faust here on the show because he was a putz.
Who could forget? And that was, you gave the example of Musburger openly rooting for one side or the other, or an occurrence in a game, and he was obviously he had the over when
breaking out the tissues and crying during that game where Jimmy
Parsegian was crying, and Brent is screaming because he must have had the over, and I think Notre Dame had like 7 points. It's 56-7 or something, and he's saying, "Yeah, throw it, yeah, there you go for the bomb," because he needed Miami to keep running up the score. All right, that's 3 of them. What else do you have, Professor?
Another spot. We got Oklahoma. Game is dropped overnight. We've been 3 most of the week. Dropped to 2 yesterday. I'm currently showing it as a pick. So, contact your guy and find out what the number is. But anything 3 and under, I'm comfortable with. Oklahoma currently shown as a pick against Auburn. Strictly an anti-Auburn play here, although I think people are overreacting to Tennessee going into Oklahoma and absolutely taking them apart last weekend. A lot of that, and I watched that game, was about Tennessee being very, very good. Not that Oklahoma is terrible. Oklahoma is a legitimate, bottom of the top 25 team. They weren't ever a top 10, maybe not even a top 15 team, which is I think what they were ranked last week. They are starting the freshman quarterback. I don't have a problem with that. I actually thought he looked pretty effective, particularly in the fourth quarter against Tennessee there. So the fact that they're going to a new quarterback does not particularly bother me at all with the Sooners. Auburn's just terrible. We said last week, I think we've said the last 2 weeks, Hugh Freeze is going to get fired, and he deserves it because he's absolutely taken Auburn backwards. They don't have a quarterback. They can't run the football. Their defense actually isn't bad, so I think under's actually in play here too. But I think the side, because I think it's going to be a really long – and again, I'm not trying to make it like Auburn's an easy job. You're deeply in second place in a state that doesn't produce a ton of local talent to begin with, just because you don't have the population numbers. So recruiting at Auburn is hard. Building a program behind, Nick Saban at Alabama is an incredibly difficult job. But Freeze has been really bad thus far in his tenure. And I look forward to culminate in a very long year here, including a loss tomorrow as Oklahoma will go in and bounce back off their loss to Tennessee with a win on the Plains and beat Auburn straight up. Like I said, currently showing pick. It's been somewhere around 3 most of the week, so I don't know exactly what that line dropped. Maybe Bo Jackson flew in or Cam Newton flew in and bombed away on the Auburn Tigers. I don't know. But it seems to be on the news that Oklahoma's officially starting their true freshman quarterback. Again, doesn't bother me. I thought with his scrambling ability, he actually looked pretty good against Tennessee in the fourth quarter last week. So, Oklahoma pick -2. I had it written down as -2.5 because that's what it dropped to yesterday. Now I'm showing pick. So whatever you can get at, if it's 3 or lower, take Oklahoma.
Yeah, well, Auburn and Hugh Freeze kind of become a punchline. And you've been punching out a lot of winning tickets going against them so far this year. All right, that's 4 games. You want to go any deeper? Or
Yep, we got one more. We got a
okay,
late night special. We're trying to give you a little bit of got you tonight, got you noon tomorrow, got you the 3:30 slot tomorrow. Primetime game. Just watch Alabama and Georgia. No need to take a side. And late night, you got Washington State going to Boise State. I'm showing Washington State getting 7. But if it drops to 6 or 6.5, I would definitely be comfortable with the Cougars there. Again, like Wazoo in the points, Boise State's got a pretty good football team, but they give up a ton of points. And if you watch this Washington State team, this appears to be a team absolutely on a mission, getting dropped from the Pac-12. They went in, beat Washington in the Apple Cup, bounced back against the San Jose State team. But people give them grief for this win. San Jose State was 3-0. Washington State was coming off a rivalry game. They go down late, but they come back, kick a field goal as the time expires to go to overtime, and then win in overtime. There's no such thing as a bad win if you're Washington State football. And I'm actually impressed with the Cougs, particularly their offense. The defense maybe not as much. Again, shootout here, although it's a huge number, but certainly the over could be in play there. But Washington State's new quarterback, Mateer, I mean, really looks like a kid who can do a little bit of everything and has. Last week threw for almost 400 yards. 2 weeks ago in a matchup against Texas Tech where they upset Texas Tech, rushed for a school record 197 yards. He does not look like a dual threat kid because he's like a big white kid and he looks like every, Manning brother Locke sitting there in the pocket, but he can run too. He's got those wheels. So impressed with Washington State. Like the direction they seem to be headed here, and you're getting a touchdown in another upset environment, televised game. I think you take the Cougs here, and again, distinct possibility they win this game straight up.
excellent work. All right, we got Washington State, Oklahoma, Louisville, Oklahoma State, and Rutgers going tonight. The Professor's 5-pack of plays here for the upcoming college football weekend. I don't know if this was out of line. I don't like to disparage college kids, but when I was watching, and we were in agreement last week, unfortunately, on USC over Michigan laying 5.5. It looked like it was doable after a real
What a
struggle in the
bizarre
first
game.
half. And I did text you about
The
USC.
funny thing is, most people I know, because of the game day drop, actually got it at 4, so they had the
Yeah,
game pushed until USC defense just said, "Oh,
that was
why do we
amazing.
need to
Yeah. So
tackle the running back?"
exactly. And I think at that time I sent you this text: cocksucking surfer song girl banging douchebags about the
I
USC
mean, that's
Trojans. I
applicable to
apologize to the families and the parents of those kids that
that's
were embarrassed.
applicable to the entire offensive line, who looked like maybe they had spent the evening before with the song. Look, going into the season, everybody in Michigan had a top level defensive line, top 5 in the country defensive line. That had underperformed up until that point. USC's offensive line had maybe overperformed a little bit. And then that was the matchup: is the Michigan's defensive line absolutely kicked USC's offensive line's ass for pretty much the entire game. Moss got, I think the last time I saw it was like 17 knockdowns throughout and 4 sacks. And that was in the fourth quarter, so they may have added a couple late. I'm not entirely sure. And then for some reason, the USC defense, on 3 different plays, just missed tackle after tackle after tackle, which is something they had not been doing up until this point this season.
Yeah. I think Orgy threw for like 40 yards in the game. So pretty despicable that they allowed that guy to run through the middle. All right, Professor, we wish you the best of luck with your selections. We know you're going to be sending it in, and that's always appreciated by the people out there, that you're living with this stuff. I mean, it's not just like you're coming on here and giving out a bunch of picks and then giving out the other side to half the other, the rest of the country. Thanks so much for being with us.
With other games, yeah.
Thanks so much for being with us, Professor. We'll see you again next week.
You have a great one.
The Professor, ladies and gentlemen, here on Bury Your Bookie. And wow, that was a lot of stuff. College football, certainly tons of action. The picks again: Rutgers tonight, laying 1.5. Oklahoma State Getting 5 against Kansas State. Louisville over Notre Dame, possibly straight up, but certainly getting 7. Oklahoma, however, a very poor Auburn team on the road, but a possible pick on proposition. It's nice if you can get it at that number. And Washington State laying 7 and hopefully less against Boise State. It was weird. I mean, getting back to that thing last night, the sight of a kicker coming onto the field to decide your fate in the final seconds. And it's weird, too, because if you had the Cowboys, you're rooting against your own team. You don't want them to get the first down that's going to clinch the game and have them take a knee and run out the clock. You want them to get stopped on that 3rd down and 12 play and then bring out Aubrey, who has been automatic. Aubrey Ayers, and you're going to nice, easy cover the spread there because nothing's going to happen in the final 30 seconds in all likelihood. And sure enough, I mean, the sight of the kicker coming out there is kind of like, it's so ominous. It's kind of like seeing your ex-wife come to an alimony adjustment hearing holding hands with your former attorney, and you're thinking, I am fucking dead meat here. But yeah, we did have, I think Al Michaels was blowing into the microphone to try and get that thing to go wide right, which it did, and the Giants ended up covering the spread. The perils of being a degenerate, ladies and gentlemen. We wish you all the luck in the world. Of course, a full slate of NFL cards. We'll have a lot of action for you next week. Also get into some postseason baseball on Bury Your Bookie. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us here on NoFilter.net. For the Professor, I'm Jeff Deforrest, and we'll see you Monday with the next edition of Bury Your Bookie.